When I was 19 years old, I was abducted and raped by a mass murderer, one who's etched into the American consciousness, John Wayne Gacy.
Even with my kids, they all loved when he was Pogo the Clown.
You know, clowns can get away with murder.
The remorseless John Wayne Gacy had proved himself to be one of the world's most evil killers.
They executed that search warrant, they went in the crawl space, and the very first shovel that they dug, they found human remains.
December 11th, 1978, 9 p.m. A 15-year-old honor student tells his mom he'll be right back. He's just going to talk to a contractor about a job that pays double what he's making now. His name is Robert Piest, and without knowing it, he was walking straight into the home of America's most prolific serial killer. 33 victims, 33 young boys, raped and murdered. This is the story of the double life of John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. If you drove through Norwood Park Township in 1978, you'd see the blueprint of the American dream. Ranch-style homes, perfect green lawns, and 8213 West Summerdale Avenue looked just like every other house on the block. Nothing unusual, or so it seemed. The owner seemed to fit right in, too. John Wayne Gacy was what people called a pillar of the community. But what truly made him beloved was Pogo the Clown. Dressed in full costume, Gacy visited children's hospitals, birthday parties, and local events. Kids adored him. Parents trusted him. He even had a photo taken with First Lady Rosalind Carter in May 1978. But if you knew where to look, and almost nobody did, there were cracks in this perfect facade. In 1968, Gacy was convicted of sodomy in Waterloo, Iowa, sentenced to 10 years in prison, but released after just 18 months. A mistake that would cost the lives of 10, 20, 30 innocent young boys. On February 12, 1971, Gacy was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage boy who claimed Gacy had lured him into his car and driven home, where he attempted to force the boy into sex. However, the court dismissed the complaint after the boy failed to appear. 4 months later, Gacy was arrested again, this time for flashing a sheriff's badge, luring another young boy into his car, and forcing him to perform oral sex. These charges were also dropped after the complainant attempted to blackmail Gacy. The warning signs were there, documented in police files and court records. But in 1978, there was no system to track sexual predators across state lines. When Gacy moved from Iowa to Illinois, his past essentially disappeared. To his new neighbors, his employees, and the parents of the children he entertained, John Wayne Gacy was exactly who he appeared to be, a pillar of the community. He plowed snow from neighborhood walks free of charge, loaned out his construction tools, and hosted massive summer parties with up to 400 guests, from local politicians to business associates. And that's how monsters hide, in plain sight, wearing the masks we want to see. But for 6 years after his first murder, Gacy perfected his method. Young men would disappear from the Chicago area, often from neighborhoods where missing persons reports were ignored or given low priority. The police had no reason to connect these disappearances, no reason to look at the successful contractor who lived in the suburbs and made children laugh. Until December 11th, 1978, Elizabeth Piest had been looking forward to this day for weeks. It was her 46th birthday, and her family was waiting at home to celebrate. All she had to do was pick up her son Robert from his shift at Nissen Pharmacy in Des Plaines. Robert Jerome Piest, an honor student at Maine West High School, and exactly the kind of teenager any parent would be proud of. He was responsible, ambitious, and saving every dollar from his pharmacy job to buy his first car. That evening, John Wayne Gacy had been at the pharmacy discussing a remodeling job with the owner, Phil Torf. During their conversation, Gacy mentioned that his company hired teenage workers at $5 an hour. $5, double what Robert was currently making. When Elizabeth arrived at 9 p.m. to pick up her son, Robert was excited. "Some contractor wants to talk to me about a job," he told her. "I'll be right back, Mom." Those were the last words she would ever hear from her son. Now, here's where this story could have ended very differently. In 1978, standard police procedure required a 72-hour waiting period before filing a missing persons report for anyone over 14. Most parents would have gone home, worried all night, and called police the next day. Elizabeth Piest was not most parents. By 9:20 p.m., she knew something was wrong. By 10 p.m., she had driven home to check if Robert was there. By 11 p.m., she was back at the pharmacy with her husband Harold, searching the area and asking everyone if they'd seen her son. At 11:30 p.m., she called the Des Plaines Police Department and demanded they take a missing persons report immediately. The desk sergeant tried to explain the 72-hour rule. Elizabeth wasn't having it. "My son wouldn't just disappear," she insisted. "This isn't like him. Something's happened." Here's where Lieutenant Joseph Kozenchak made the decision that would save lives. Kozenchak had a son who attended the same high school as Robert. Maybe that's why he listened when most cops might have sent the family home to wait. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was just good police work. Instead of following procedure, Kozenchak decided to investigate immediately. That decision, to trust a mother's instincts over departmental policy, would uncover the worst serial killing case in American history. December 12th, 1978, early morning. Lieutenant Kozenchak started where any good detective would, with the last person known to have spoken with the missing teenager. The pharmacy employees told him about the contractor who had been there the previous evening, talking about hiring teenagers. His name was John Wayne Gacy, and he ran PDM Contractors. At 3:30 a.m., Kozenchak ran Gacy's name through the system. What came back changed everything. The 1968 sodomy conviction in Iowa, the 1971 assault charge in Chicago. Suddenly, this wasn't just a missing teenager case. This was a sexual predator who had been talking to a 15-year-old boy about a job opportunity. Kozenchak and two Des Plaines police officers visited Gacy at his home the following evening. Gacy told them he had not offered Piest a job and had only returned to the pharmacy shortly after 8 p.m. because he had left his appointment book. Gacy promised to come to the station later that evening to make a statement, claiming he was unable to do so at that moment because his uncle had just died. When questioned about timing, he responded, "You guys are very rude. Don't you have any respect for the dead?" What they didn't know was that while they were talking to him, Robert Piest's body was already at the bottom of the Des Plaines River. But Gacy had made a mistake. Driving back from dumping the body, his car slid off the icy tri-state tollway and got stuck in a snowbank. When a tow truck pulled him out, Gacy was 38 miles from his house, covered in mud, at 3 a.m. At 3:20 a.m., Gacy arrived at the police station covered in fresh mud on his shoes and pants on a freezing December night when the ground should have been frozen solid. When asked about it, Gacy claimed he'd been in a minor car accident, but Kozenchak wasn't buying it. He got a search warrant for Gacy's house. The search revealed several suspicious items: police badges, handcuffs, pornographic movies, multiple driver's licenses, and underwear too small to fit Gacy. They also found a class ring engraved with the initials JAS and a Nissan Pharmacy photo receipt in a trash can, alongside a 36-inch section of nylon rope. The receipt belonged to Kim Byers, one of Robert's co-workers. She had borrowed Robert's jacket earlier that evening and placed the receipt in the pocket, returning the coat to him as he left the store. But this receipt was proof. It proved that Robert Piest had been inside John Wayne Gacy's house. It connected the missing teenager to the man who claimed he'd never seen him. The class ring would later be traced to John Allen Sheech, who had disappeared in January 1977, almost 2 years earlier. Now, Kozenchak knew he wasn't just dealing with one missing teenager. This was something much bigger. December 13th through 21st, 1978. The Des Plaines Police Department began 24-hour surveillance of John Wayne Gacy. 2 officers in an unmarked car, watching his house, following his movements, documenting everything he did. Gacy knew he was being watched, and he seemed to enjoy it. He would wave at the surveillance officers from his front yard. He invited them to restaurants for meals, chatting casually about his business, his marriages, his clowning. During one breakfast conversation, Gacy made a chilling remark. "You know, clowns can get away with murder." On December 19th, Gacy made a fatal mistake. He invited the surveillance detectives inside his house again. While one officer distracted Gacy, another walked into his bedroom. While using Gacy's toilet, the officer noticed a rancid smell emanating from a heating duct, the unmistakable odor of rotting corpses. December 21st, Gacy was arrested on a marijuana charge, just enough to hold him while police finalized their second search warrant. That night, investigators returned to 8213 West Summerdale Avenue. They found that Gacy had unplugged his sump pump, flooding the crawl space with water, a desperate last attempt to hide his crimes. After draining the water, evidence technician Daniel Genty entered the cramped space and began digging. Within minutes, he uncovered putrefied flesh and a human arm bone. "I think this place is full of kids," he shouted to the investigators above. He was right. By the time the excavation was complete, they had recovered 26 bodies from the crawl space. 3 more were found elsewhere on the property. 29 young men, all showing signs of asphyxiation, all buried like garbage beneath the house, where Gacy had entertained neighbors and hosted Democratic Party meetings. December 20th, 1978. Even before the bodies were discovered, the pressure was mounting. That evening, Gacy drove to his lawyer's office, appearing anxious and disheveled. He immediately asked for an alcoholic drink. Sam Amarante fetched a bottle of Seagram's whiskey, and Gacy drank 2 cupfuls straight. Amarante, by now dubious of Gacy's claims of innocence, placed a copy of the Daily Herald on his desk. "You said you had something new to tell me, something important." Gacy picked up the newspaper, pointed to the front page article about Robert Peast's disappearance, and said, "This boy is dead. He's dead. He's in a river." What followed was a rambling confession that lasted until dawn. "I have been the judge, jury, and executioner of many, many people," Gacy began. He confessed to murdering at least 30 victims, most buried in his crawl space, 5 others dumped in the Des Plaines River. Gacy dismissed his victims as male prostitutes, hustlers, and liars. He claimed he sometimes awoke to find dead, strangled kids with their hands cuffed behind their backs, as if he had no memory of killing them. Midway through his confession, Gacy passed out from the alcohol. When he woke hours later and was reminded of what he'd said, he simply shrugged, "Well, I can't think about this right now. I've got things to do." December 22nd, 1978. After police found the bodies and informed Gacy he would face murder charges, he told officers he wanted to clear the air. In the presence of his lawyers, Gacy provided a formal confession to murdering approximately 30 young males. What was most chilling wasn't just the details, it was his complete lack of emotion. He spoke about killing 30-plus young men the way someone might describe their grocery list. No remorse, no acknowledgement that these were human beings with families and futures. The confession revealed the calculated nature of his crimes. Gacy had his own employees dig trenches in his crawl space so he would have graves available. He planned to cover the entire space with concrete in January 1979. For years, John Wayne Gacy had perfected his method while maintaining his public mask. He attended Democratic Party functions with bodies rotting beneath his house. He hosted summer parties while young men decomposed in his crawl space. He dressed as Pogo the Clown and entertained children while their peers lay buried in his backyard. Behind every statistic is a story. Behind every body found in that crawl space was a young man with dreams, ambitions, and people who loved him. Robert Peast was saving money to buy his first car. He wanted to study business in college. His family celebrated his academic achievements and strong work ethic. Timothy McCoy, Gacy's first victim, was just 16 when he was killed in 1972. He was traveling from Michigan to Nevada when he encountered Gacy at a Chicago bus station. He never made it home. John Butkovich was 17 when he went to Gacy's house to collect money he was owed for construction work. His family spent years wondering what had happened to him. The youngest victim was Samuel Stapleton, just 14 years old. The oldest was Russell Nelson, 21. They came from different backgrounds, different neighborhoods, different circumstances. Many had been reported missing by their families, but their cases were never connected. In the 1970s, there was no national database, no social media, no standardized protocols for sharing information between jurisdictions. 8 victims remained unidentified for decades. They were buried with numbers instead of names. Victim 19, Victim 21, Victim 28. It wasn't until DNA technology advanced that some were finally identified. In 2011, William George Bundy was identified 33 years after his murder. In 2017, James Jimmy Hackinson was identified using genetic genealogy. His sister had never stopped looking for him. February 6, 1980, Cook County Criminal Court. The trial of John Wayne Gacy was one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings in American history. The prosecution had overwhelming evidence, 33 bodies, detailed confessions, witness testimony, and that crucial receipt from Nissen Pharmacy. March 12, 1980. After deliberating for only 1 hour and 50 minutes, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all 33 counts of murder. The speed was remarkable. In less than 2 hours, 12 jurors had reviewed evidence about 33 separate murders and concluded that John Wayne Gacy was guilty of them all and sane enough to face the consequences. Judge Louis Garripo sentenced Gacy to death. For the next 14 years, Gacy lived on death row, maintaining his innocence and claiming his employees had committed the murders while he was traveling on business. He took up painting, creating artwork featuring clowns and Disney characters that sold for thousands of dollars to collectors fascinated by true crime memorabilia. Multiple appeals were filed and denied. His final federal appeal was rejected in 1993. On May 10, 1994, at 12:58 a.m., John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. He was 52 years old. His last meal, a bucket of KFC chicken, French fries, fried shrimp, strawberries, and Diet Coke. His final words, "Kiss my ass." Outside the prison, crowds had gathered, some protesting the death penalty, others celebrating. They laid out 33 body bags to represent Gacy's victims. The house at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue was demolished in April 1979. The lot remained empty for years before a new house was built with a different address.